Hello everyone, today we're going to go through and discuss base building tips that are going to help take your base to the next level. We're going to be focusing on two different things. One is efficiency and two is aesthetics, and learning how we can merge the two to actually make a fully functioning, cool looking base. Alright, first up, we're going to go through and discuss storage, because storage is going to be the number one thing that you have to master if you want to have an effective base. All your chests can be told to have only certain items in them, and that's going to make sorting everything a whole lot easier. So if you go to your chest settings, you'll see on this chest, I will only allow this cabinet to have schematics, enhancement items, and key items. As you can see, only these are allowed. So if I try and place wood or ingots in here, I'm trying to transfer them over. I'm clicking the move button. They will not move over. But if I go back in here and I, for example, turn wood on, I then go back in and I transfer the wood over, it will work. You can go through this with your armor and your weapons, and it will allow you to just manage everything a lot easier, and you never have to worry about items just being placed in random spots in your base. So now that you have that in mind, let's go through and actually start building and use some of these storage containers, both for aesthetics and actually for efficiency things. Alright, now before we go through and get started actually building here, I've seen people still struggle with this quite a bit online, and I did cover this in a previous building tips video, but I want to reiterate it again, because everything we do after this is going to be significantly easier if you have this tip down. Look at your building options, and whatever button you see next to the options change alignment mode, hold that down. That's going to allow you to go through and snap the item to a wall, meaning you don't have to just eyeball things. You can actually snap it directly to a wall anywhere around your base. This same concept will also apply to railings. Railings will snap to the edge of floors like this if you use that same process. Now, as you can see, it will only snap to the middle of the walls. It will never actually snap to the dead center of the wall. And the only way that will actually work is if you have a pillar. It will let you snap it directly to the pillar. So you have to place down the pillar first, and then you can get that center snap point, and then you can go through and break down the pillar. And so we're going to go through and basically put the chest in the dead center of the wall here. And then we're going to snap directly to the side of the other chest, just like so and just like so. Now, typically, you can't stack an item, as you can see, if it's just a blueprint. The item has to actually be made in order to snap it. So we're going to go through and fill these all in as they're building them here. So it's going to allow us to go through and stack our chests. And this is really important because it's going to save you a lot of space in the long run. And this can be done with pretty much all these storage systems. So for example, the advanced storage, if we want to go through and build this, let's say just next to this like this, we can go through and do that. This box in the middle can now be destroyed, and this one's going to stay here. Alright, now that you have this space here in the middle, you can just go through and decorate it. So if you want to, you could just throw down a light source in the middle so it actually looks pretty cool aesthetically, and it's not just a wall of boxes, for example. Or if you want to go through and break that down, maybe you want to add maybe a bit more color or a bit more freshness. If you want to go through and place a potted houseplant. At first, the houseplant will not place. Well, again, remember what I said by snapping, making things easier? Hold down the snap button, and voila, the potted houseplant will then fit here in the middle. And you've just filled in this space with a lot of aesthetic detail. Now, another thing I want to go through and mention, let's break these things down, for example, real quick. And we're going to go through and basically fill in more space. So if we want to build even more storage, for example, let's say you have two storage walls. All right, so if we go back over to the furniture, we select the houseplant, for example. The houseplant will not fit in the middle. As you can see, no matter how we spin this, it will not go in the middle. But if you hold the snap feature, we're going to line it up. And as you can see, the snap feature will allow you to actually connect to one of the boxes. And even though it does mesh a little bit here with this blueprint, and it meshes with the other crate, because we use the snap feature, it let us fill in this space. So by utilizing the snap feature, it's going to 100% allow you to just add more detail to your base and actually get even more stuff in your base, which is really important because it's already so hard to build in a circle. All right, now that brings me over to the next tip here. And I've seen a lot of people constantly talk about being worried about raids. And there is one very, very simple solution, and that's build a giant circle of defenses around your base. And now, I'll be honest, it does look ugly. Raids will never take place if you have this circle in place. If I leave a gap like this, a raid will happen. But if you completely fill in the space and enemy NPCs cannot see a way to get in your base, the raid event itself will never actually trigger. Alright, now there is one downside to going through and building a base with all of these defensive walls. And that's that if raids cannot get in, that means that the wandering merchant will never visit your base. So if you want them to visit your base, you cannot fully enclose your base, or it's going to basically cancel all events, both positive ones like that wandering merchant and negative ones like the raid. Alright, now returning back to kind of the building area here, it's important to know that many different items in the game actually act as a flat surface to place other items. As you saw previously, we could stack storage containers on top of each other, but we were just stacking storage containers that were the exact same type. but many other items can be placed on top of items like storage containers. A great example is the item retrieval machine. Now you can't snap these because it's not the exact same item, but if you get it up top, you can actually just kind of, as you see here, fit it exactly how you want it to. You will have to do a little eyeballing here. Basically, we're going to make it go against the wall and ensure it's about as normal as possible. And then as you can see, we went through and put this on top of the storage container, and it looks significantly cleaner than what it would if it was just sitting there on the ground. I do this with a lot of different stations like this, and you can even do this with the actual workbenches here as well. So if you have assembly lines, for example, if you want to place these storage containers below those, and then the assembly lines there on top, you can definitely go through and do that to just conserve room in your base overall, because the storage containers are still clearly very easily accessible, and this is just kind of up out of the way. Alright, now next up is all about taking advantage of the space that you have. So there's quite a few items in the game that are just ridiculously large for no reason, and you can actually build either on them or in them. So for example, the large fishing area here, you can pretty much use anywhere here on this deck to go through and build something, and it's not going to impede the PAL progress. You still have the chest down here, and you can easily still go through and fish, and you'll have plenty of room, so you can put things, for example, down like this here, and still have access to all the features you need to have access to. Or things like the ranch, for example. This is a big area, but you could place down pretty much something like a statue of power. You won't be able to place it too close to the railing, but you could just throw it down somewhere throughout here, and fill the space in here. You could also put the chest for this actual location. Like let's say you want all the pals to put their items here in just one chest. Place it on the inside so you take up even less room. But the biggest one here is the breeding area. This thing is enormous. And it would just make sense to have these two items right next to the breeder. Slap down this here in the middle. And it actually doesn't look too bad either because it's perfectly aligned here with the pillar. Go through and place an egg incubator on both sides. And you've just saved yourself an immense amount of room. It actually kind of looks cool too with like the little design there in the background. Just make sure on like these larger items that you're just building inside of them, because it's not really going to impede what the pals are doing. Maybe, you know, they might have to walk around it, but if they're in the ranch, they're still going to deposit items every amount of seconds. It doesn't really matter whether an item's in here or not. If they're breeding, they're just going to be walking around, and as the timer ticks down, they're going to produce an egg, regardless of where they walk here in the area. So this is a really easy way to go through and save a lot of space in your base. Alright, now the next one's going to be an efficiency tip. You're probably already really familiar with the concept of placing a chest really close to, like, let's say a mining station, for example, or a workstation. But with the farm, it's a little bit different. There's a lot of items you want to place in close proximity because you've got a lot of different pals working in close proximity. You've got your watering pals, you've got your transporting pals, you've got your planting pals, and your harvesting pals. So with that being said, one, the food box should be really close by. But you want this really close. When the pals finish harvesting the food, they will place it in the box right away, and then you get back out there and get back to work. Same thing with your cooking location. Build this really close, because once the food is cooked, they can immediately then place it in the box, and your ice pal is never going to move, especially if they have nocturnal. They will literally just sit here non-stop. So this is going to be the best place to have these two really close together. And then also make sure you've got your crusher and your mill really close to your farm, because your watering pal is going to go in between watering here and then can easily rotate to this area in between as the crops are actually growing. Okay, now I want to go through and kind of demonstrate, kind of combining a lot of the tips we've already discussed so far to kind of just give you a small representation of things that you can do. For example, if we have this wooden shelf here, we can go through and snap this on a wall. We're going to then snap it to this here on both sides, and like this, and we'll do 5 in total. So now this is going to give us an area to go through and store stuff, but if we want them to just be cosmetic and not anything else, we're going to disable the chest settings, and we're going to uncheck all. That way, nothing will get stored in here ever. They're solely just here to look cool. We can grab this, and again, we're going to snap it, and it will snap to the middle of the first middle wall here, and we can move this as far back as it will let us. We now have this cool little area here, but now you have this space, right? We talked about filling in basically typical space that is usually unusable. So items that you could store in here that would not be impeding the pals in any way would be things like this, for example. Maybe you want to throw the snowman in here. Something else too, maybe the witch's cauldron looks pretty cool and you want to go through and store this in the middle. Now you've got two different things that are going to help your base overall. They're out of the way, but they also kind of fit in your build. And then lastly, maybe you want to go through and put, let's go with the pal dressing facility. Maybe you want this here in the middle, this Cativa. It's got a cool little glow and a light. Maybe you could put him here in the middle. He'll be the actual server here. And then to add on to this too, this whole countertop is just flat space. So if you want to go through and put something like, let's say, a cooking pot up here, maybe you do want a small little fire pal to come in here and cook. You can just throw that up here on the counter. It looks a little weird with the flames, I'm not going to lie, but you could totally put that there out of the way. Or if you just want to throw plants, for example, up here on the top. So yeah, if you want to go over here, maybe you want to go through and place down that houseplant that I showed you earlier. Place this here in the corner, in between the shelf and this, and then you can go through and place another tabletop houseplant on the top here to kind of fill in that space. And suddenly this little area now has aesthetics, has actual purpose because it positively impacts your base, and if you want, even someone who has a job here as well. So it's a very easy way to take a lot of what we've learned so far to kind of just fill in this space and add a lot of detail to your base. Alright, now lastly I want to go through and talk about foundational support. I've seen this brought up a couple of different times, so I just want to demonstrate exactly how this works because sometimes it can be confusing when I write it out without properly demonstrating this. So if you want to build over a cliff, or specifically build over water, water will not let you place down foundations at all. It will give you the prompt, not placed on ground. But you can in fact build bridges if you want, but you have to utilize ceilings and not foundations. I'm explaining this because I actually did a base build with a waterfall involved that I built a bridge over the waterfall, and it seems like a lot of people could not figure out how to make that work. So how you're going to do it is build these ceilings as far out as you can. The moment you get red, you can no longer build. You're going to want to go to the pillars and then hop down in the water. Now go through and place down the pillar at the last place where we'll allow you to do it, which is going to be what is supported. And then this one happened to already have one on the ground, so we're just going to ignore that. We'll build this one here, and as you can see, we'll be able to then build a ceiling out from here. Once we have the ceiling, so here I'm going to demonstrate it to you now. Place down the one here, but it has to touch the ground. If it does not touch the ground, as you can see, you will not be able to build out. So in order to do this, all you're going to do is stare at the pillar, and as soon as you stare at the pillar, it will disappear. If it disappears, that means it's actually below the water, directly below the pillar, and all you need to do is press the build button, and as you can see, it built itself underneath the water. Same thing with over here. If we go back over here and place down the pillar, right here, we should be able to place this down. And if we're going to stare at it, it should disappear right down there. And then same thing here. We're going to go back with the pillar up top. We're going to look at this pillar until it disappears. Place it down. Now we should be able to go back and place our ceilings. As you can see, it's going to extend out. 2 more. And you can continue repeating this until you've got all the way across. So if you ever want to build in the water, want to incorporate the water into some part of your base, maybe you want like a dock, for example, or build a bridge, that is how you do it. You have to build the pillars down into the water. Now, the one weird, quirky thing about this is that you as a player cannot go under the water, and if you break this, you will notice you can't actually access this pillar. You can never pick it back up. Realistically, the only way to make this pillar disappear would be to remove your base, and slowly it will deteriorate over time. Once it's below the water, you can't really pick it back up, but honestly, because you're on a square foundation, if you ever build over here again, it'll just be down below waiting for you. Alright, well that pretty much wraps it up for the video. If you guys do have any questions pertaining to any of the tips, or maybe even questions pertaining to other things that you would like to see in the future, please drop it down in the comments. And if you enjoyed today's video, then please consider leaving a like, subscribing to see more, and I will see you all later.